who's going to give us today's message. Thank you. Could you unmute, please, Phyllis?
I thought I had.
All yours. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jeanette, for a lovely meditation. And I just simply love that music. And maybe you're going to be voting for the harp and the cello in the ABC Classic 100 instruments that they're conducting at the moment. Both beautiful instruments and an absolutely beautiful piece of music. So, keeping score. But let me first start out with this little piece that I found on a Facebook page that I am friends with. It read, "Why does it feel so good to stand under the shower or cascading water?" It might be a waterfall. The answer may well surprise you. You see, often our thoughts run amok. They run to the past, where you focus on pain or memories. They flit to the future, where you fear the unknown. So seldom do they rest in the present, where you enjoy peace. The feel of water coursing over the body brings awareness to the body. It brings you to the present moment. It causes you to simply be. You are focused on the pleasant sensations rather than the chattering of the monkey mind, which takes your hand and leads you astray. This centering effect is why so many often receive insights whilst taking a shower. Any of you experience that? I certainly do. For me, it is often under the shower that the talk title will come to me, as it did this time. An inspiring thought, a song or piece of music, or a reminder of something that I need to do during the day. One or more of these things certainly help me to start my day in a peaceful state of mind. And as I said, it was while under the shower that this talk title came to me. And as is often the case, I considered, why this? What is so important about the question, keeping score? Or are you keeping score? Have you ever considered how much credence we give to scoring things? Let me explain some of the myriad of areas in my life where I realised I ask or am asked, are you keeping score? For me, the area where keeping score is generally considered is sport. I'm not a big fan of sport or watching sport unless I know somebody personally playing. I don't usually watch sport of any sort on the television. But a few weeks ago, my daughter was unable to attend the soccer match that her sons were playing, and as it was a night game, I decided not to drive the considerable distance to the match. It was an away match and on the other side of town. So, for the first time, I watched it live streamed on TV. As usual, being able to see how well or otherwise the boys played was of interest, and I suppose I gave them a bit of a score as to their playing skills. And the final score of the whole match was, of course, of great interest, because that determines whether they get 3 points for winning, share the points for a draw, or get no points alongside their team on the premiership table, much like the AFL, of course. The older of the two boys is the goalkeeper, and he is always extra pleased when he has a clean sheet against his name. And of course, he keeps score of how often that happens. Of course, I'm always very pleased when the boys' team wins. And yes, I do like to know the AFL teams or whether they win or lose that I follow. And of course, the final score is of interest. But it's not usually until the next day that I catch up on that info. And yet I do like to know the score. I'm interested in the final score of the matches of the SA teams or individual players. I'm also interested in teams and individuals that play at a national or international level. So I am very pleased that keeping score is an important part of competition. But I've also noticed that even friendly social games of any sport can become a competition. For many people, and keeping score and winning is of greater importance than simply enjoying the so-called friendly game. Do you realise that this is only one of the many areas where we keep score? It may not always be called keeping score, rather statistics, but keeping statistics is keeping score. Recently, I was shopping with Wendy, my youngest daughter, and we both purchased something at a particular store. And when we went to pay, after inserting our cards, we were asked, each one of us, to answer a survey question. And the shop assistant simply said, "What is the score you would give out of 10? 10 being the best score for the service you've received, or in relationship to the question," because each one of us got a different question. And it wasn't until after we'd given that score that our transaction went through. That was the first for both of us. We had never been asked to do that at a service desk before. So after they're thinking about it, we had no doubt that the management was keeping score of the results to see how well their staff was doing in the service area of that shop. So does the score affect our judgment? Well, the score we gave that particular store that we were in would certainly affect our judgment, because we would go back there. We got really good service. And I would suggest that it depends on how we can consider that score and who gave the score. Often we are asked to give a score to determine how well we think a facilitator of a workshop, class, or performer executed the task at hand. Recently, I attended an Adelaide Symphony Orchestra performance. That was a Sanson piece that we listened to that night, as well as some others. And a few days after the performance, I was asked to complete a survey, giving a score on my experience of the concert and the music of one of the particular composers whose work was played for the very first time worldwide at that concert. I am sure that those scores were added to other people's scores, and the orchestra management is keeping score of the audience's responses. And that way they have an idea of what people are looking for or wanting to listen to. I realise that so often we are asked to give a score or are influenced by the score and judgment of others, because a score is really a judgment often of a performance. It can be in reference to books, films, service at a store, student ability, and there are many more areas where we are either asked, what's the score, or what score would you give? And that someone is keeping score of the overall results. In the past weeks, I participated in the C class, Health and Wellness, and Roz pointed out that Myrtle Fillmore suggested the importance of assessing our health and wellness in at least 3 areas. Now, to me, taking an assessment is keeping score. In other words, keeping score of our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. In the upcoming class, which is self-care, the author of the book we are to read suggests even more areas are important for overall self-care, which in my view is also about health and wellness, as it is our self-care that will lead to our health and wellness. In the opening chapter, the author writes, "Just like our cars, we would not buy a new car and drive it around for years and not ever take it in for routine oil changes and maintenance checks. Our body, mind, and spirit require the same level of upkeep." The author Robin Gobbin, suggests we need to take care of our social, physical, intellectual, vocational, spiritual, and emotional needs, all of which come under one of the areas we call body, mind, and spirit. Reading further into the book, she suggests that we keep score of these areas to make sure each one is given an adequate level of attention so that we can live a balanced life. And she offers lots of activities in which help us make that score or keep those scores. But have you ever thought of giving a score to how much time you give to your social, physical, intellectual, vocational, spiritual, emotional well-being? I wonder, if I asked you right now to give a score out of 10 for the investment of time and energy to give to these areas of your life, what would they be? Would one area be higher than the other? Or do you give an equal amount of time and effort to all aspects of your well-being? So often it seems to me that the work area or vocational area gets a much higher level of attention in our lives at the expense of most of the other areas. And this, unfortunately, can lead to burnout, stress, and illness. So knowing the score is a great guide for us to readjust our time and energy if we recognise that our life is out of balance. Even though Myrtle was specifically referring to healing, using her suggestions can be very helpful in any area of our life where we experience challenge. And her suggestion was, and I quote, daily declare that your spiritual life and world, your mental life and world, and your physical life and world are unified, and that you are expressing harmoniously the ideas of the Christ mind on these three planes. End of quote. This is all about creating balance in our life experience. She mentions affirmations, and affirmations and denials are a wonderful tool that Unity uses. And they can help with our mental well-being. However, reciting affirmations are not necessarily a guarantee that we will change our mindset. And did you know that your biggest asset in the world is your mindset? So it's very important that we focus on those things we desire to see how they show up in our lives. And we must have faith that they will. And the song we sang at the beginning of the service helped us to understand that. I know Myrtle certainly used affirmations during and after the healing of her body, but she had more than that. She had a clear vision of how life would be when her body was free of the tuberculosis that for many years she believed she had inherited. Myrtle continued to function to the best of her ability during the 2 years of healing, giving attention to the physical, mental, and spiritual nourishment she gave her body. I believe she would have continued to participate in New Thought activities, continued to embrace the family as they grew, read all manner of spiritual books, particularly the Bible, and generally endeavoured to live as normal a life as she could, while continuing her healing work daily. I feel sure she was conscious of giving her life the attention it needed in all areas for her healing. Her faith was strong, and with constant prayer, meditation, and holding strong to her faith that she was a child of God and did not inherit sickness, her body responded to her spiritual, mental, and physical work. And in a way, I'm sure she kept score of how she was doing with that. Didn't Myrtle know that it was through her human expression that she expressed her spiritual life or self? I believe she did. Looking after our physical well-being demonstrates the importance of that aspect of our being in the expression of health and well-being, which is our health birthright. Try keeping score of how well you practice these principles for a week, particularly if you have a healing challenge you are looking to overcome, knowing that you need to focus on your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being for a really balanced life that can lead to health and wellness. We can use these same principles to develop our awareness of abundance in our life. And to increase abundance in our life, use the spiritual practice of praise and gratitude for all the blessings in your life. Use affirmations and denial with faith to change your mindset, to be sure to keep your physical well-being in top condition. Have a clear vision of how life will look and feel when you realise how truly prosperous you are, really right now, and each day as you work through this. Keeping score of all the things in your life you have to be grateful for on a daily basis will increase your prosperity. I have found it very helpful to write down at least 10 things I'm grateful for at the end of each day as a great way to keep me on track. Try it and see what happens over a period of a month. A human self wants to see results, wants to keep score. As I was contemplating the subject of this talk, I was reminded of another area in our lives where we may keep score. There are times when we feel we have been betrayed, spoken unkindly to or about, and sometimes even physically hurt by another, cut off by another driver on the road. Do we react or respond to these experiences? There may be times when we want to take revenge, a very human sense-oriented reaction. Or if we listen to the still small voice within, which is our divinity, and follow its lead, we will forgive the seeming injustice and move on. And there is another aspect to this giving and receiving where we may keep score. Sometimes a friend or even a stranger will affect our lives by doing a good deed, and we may feel obliged to pay back that good deed. This is a lovely thing to do, and yet when I was thinking about this, I realised that although there may be times when we are aware that the giver is expecting a repayment for the kindness or the good deed, this is a very closed circle of giving and receiving. Of course, this closed circle is very necessary when borrowing money from a bank or financial institution to buy a large item, such as a house or a car. But a simple good deed is very different. I love the idea that a young lad came up with that suggested rather than paying back a good deed, we pay it forward. You may have seen the film where that was the focus of the film. It was a wonderful film and worth watching several times. I like this idea because it increases the circle of gratitude. Keeping score and being sure to pay forward a good deed is fun, rewarding for both giver and receiver, and helps to create a feeling of appreciation for the goodness inherent in humankind. So how do you keep score? We have looked at some of the myriad of ways that keeping score shows up in our lives. As I said at the beginning, we may not call it keeping score, but in many ways, that's exactly what we do. You may think of many more areas, but keeping score of our own lives in our own lives is very important, I think, if we want to live a balanced, joy-filled life. Let go of keeping score of those unpleasant experiences where you may have felt like taking revenge, and practice keeping score of when you would be wise to pay a good deed forward. You may like to take time during the next week to give a score to the physical, mental, and spiritual areas of your life and see how balanced your life really is. But have fun keeping score. God bless you all.
Thank you so much. Always amazing. Can we give Phyllis another hand? I mean, I know she can only hear me, but we're all giving you our thanks. Thank you so much. Lots to contemplate, lots to think of. As always, very thought-provoking. So thank you so much, Phyllis.